right. Well, should I say something, or does anyone have a request for today?
I have one question.
Okay,
If you
cool.
could, if you could speak briefly about, I think you already spoke about this, but I don't know where to find it, the record. Um, Srila Guru Maharaj, when he wrote his Prapana Jivanamritam, he put the limbs of surrender in another order, different from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Hmm.
If you could speak about this, there is some reason. I
Hmm.
already heard this, but I forgot.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really nice topic. I'm glad that you suggested that. Yes, well, actually, the order that Srila Sridhar uses is one that is found within the scriptures. I believe it's considered. There's one. I have a copy here. There's a verse that Srila Sridhar quotes. That Anukulyasya Sankalpa part, which is from somewhere in the scriptures, and so I believe that that is. It doesn't give a reference here, but as far as I understand, the order that Srila Sridhar follows, it's the order that is more, how can I say, standard, or more. It may be because actually Srila Sridhar, a lot of what he's presented in Prapana Jivanamrita is from collections that were made by Jiva Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, from what was collected in the writings. He mentioned at the end of the first chapter. He mentioned, I believe it's Jiva Goswami and Sanatan Goswami. Yes, in the last verse of the first chapter, he mentions this nectar gathered by the great souls, headed by Srila Sanatan and Sri Jiva. So a lot of the verses that are presented here, they were like highlighted in the writings of Sanatan and Jiva Goswami. So it may be that he's taken this order of the six limbs from their writings. I'm not sure, but anyhow, there's some scriptural precedent for that order that Srila Sridhar follows in Prapana Jivanamrita. And it actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he did something a little different. He selected a different order from what was more known. And I mean, the only thing, I mean, I have my own thoughts about this, which I'm happy to share. But firstly, we can say what I have heard from Srila Sridhar about that is there's one recording where he's expressing appreciation for the way that Bhaktivinoda Thakur presented it, and it's a very nice topic. But it's very interesting because you see, and there's some significance between both of these ways of presenting. And the most clear example of that is in Doinya, humility, or what is the word that is used in Prapana Jivanamrita? Not Doinya, but what's the other word for humility that is used? Here it is. Karpanyam, yes, is the word used in Prapana Jivanamrita. So it's very significant. You see that in the order given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, humility is the first. Oh, are we still? Okay, you froze up for a minute there. So you see in the order that's given by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, humility is the first limb in his Sharanagati, right? Humility is the very first limb in the six. Whereas in the order that Srila Sridhar uses and is used elsewhere, humility is the last, right? The last of the six. So it's very interesting. but we can see that there is some significance to both of these ways of presenting the six. So in the talk that I heard of Srila Sridhar Maharaj regarding this, he didn't go into like a big explanation about why these different orders are used. He was just mentioning appreciation for the way that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur presented things. And he was expressing how humility is actually the first, it is the first feeling. Humility is the first step, we can say, in our approach towards divinity. Humility is the first necessity. Doinya Atmani Vedan, right? The first is humility, then Atmani Vedan, self-giving. So he was saying, Srila Sridhar Maharaj was saying that before we can go to take shelter, then before that, we first must feel some lack within ourselves. We must feel the need to take shelter. We must feel we were just talking about this, maybe it was in Budapest on the weekend. But first there must be some feeling of emptiness. If anybody wants to go to learn something new, first they must feel that there's need within themselves, that they are lacking to some degree. So this is the absolute first necessity for any sincere seeker. They must feel within themselves, that degree of lacking, of need, of lowliness, that hunger, right? That lullum. You can only have hunger if there's some emptiness in your stomach, right? So there has to be that spirit, that emptiness in a healthy sense. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he was expressing, in this recording I heard, he was expressing appreciation for the way in which Bhaktivinoda Thakur chose to present these limbs of surrender. So what he's done is perfect, and we can see that, we can understand that. But then if you look at Prapana Jivanamrita, you look to see what is the significance of humility being the last feeling. The last of these six limbs. We see there's also some purpose there. There's some meaning there, and it's interesting because humility, it is the first feeling, and it is also the last feeling. There's in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, there's some beautiful expressions, very profound expressions of Sanatana Goswami in this regard, and he describes how prema and humility, prema and doinya, love and humility, they have this kind of circular relationship where they both stimulate the other. They both increase the other. How humility will increase love, and love increases humility. In those who feel deep love, they are humbled before their beloved, right? They are on their knees, at the feet of their beloved. That is the nature of humility, of love. Sorry, love brings people to their knees, right? As the expression goes. So, and the point is also made that actually, the deepest kind of humility can only be experienced by the most exalted souls, that only those who have divine love can experience real humility. So there's a distinction made between humility in a relative sense, humility that comes as a result of sambandha gyan, humility that comes out of just like a clear recognition of our condition, and then there's humility, which comes as a result of divine love, So that's another kind of humility, to humility based on Amara Jivan, right? Humility based on recognition of our own, shortcomings, our own anartas. Of course, in a relative sense, there's some value to that. There's some, that can help us on our path. There's some need for that. But in the absolute sense, it doesn't have any real value. It doesn't, what is the real value of that? In the positive sense, there's no positive meaning there. So in the absolute sense, humility, that like significant humility is something that is based on divine love. It is something categorically different. It is we see in the verses of that Shalish, it's very interesting to look at you realize how limited language is when you're trying to talk about these things, like interesting, which sounds like such a terrible word to use, but it's very striking, let's say, if you look at the verses in the chapter on humility in Prapana Jivanamrita, you see how Srila Maharaj, you see it everywhere in Prapana Jivanamrita. Maybe in that chapter it's a little more striking, but there's some, everything that first we can say everything Srila Sridhar Maharaj does is significant, and there's specific purpose in the way that he presents the verses. And so you see, so particularly it's evident in the chapter on humility, because you see the expressions of humility, they change. And in the beginning of the chapter, their verse is more concerned with the first type of humility, in recognition of our fallen condition, that kind of humility. But then towards the end of the chapter, Srila Sridhar Maharaj is citing very high verses, in one of those verses is the verse of Madhavendra Puri, Yi Dina Dayarja Nata He, this verse which is said to be spoken by Srimati Radharani herself, and was revealed through the heart of Madhavendra Puri and tasted by Mahaprabhu. This verse which Gurudev described as the highest verse. And also Chaitanya Charitamrita describes it in that way. And that verse is a love that verse is an expression of deep love and humility in separation from the Lord. How will I live without you? How will I continue? So this is at the the far end of the spectrum of humility, the highest, the zenith point of humility, that is the outcome of divine love. And there's another, that Amunya Danyani, that of Bilva Mangal Thakur, I believe that verse is also there. And these are expressions which aren't based on any type of rational or logical consideration or calculation, but what comes from the heart, in the deepest mood of love. I'll just read two of these verses, which are an example of that, and extremely beautiful. There's a Yi Dina Dayarja Nata He Maturanata Kadavalokya Se Hridayam Twadaloka Kataram Dayita Brahmyati Kim Karomyaham. And this is the verse of Madhavendra Puri. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj's illumination is: the heart's eruption in the sorrow of separation even for one who has achieved the ultimate perfection of love and separation. And then the verse, O gentle-hearted Lord, ever gracious upon the destitute, O Lord of Mathura, when shall I see you again? In your absence, my broken heart trembles. Beloved, what shall I do now? And then this second verse I wanted to read. Shri Krishna Virahe Asahayavat Swanata Karuna Karshanam. A devotee in separation of Krishna helplessly draws the grace of the Lord of his life. And this is a verse of Bilvamangal Thakur, which was very much appreciated by Srila Gurudev, and it's also included in the second chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is so much appreciated by Gurudev and Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Amunya danyani dinantarani haritvara lokanam antarena anata bando kurunaika sindhu ha hanta katam nayami. O Hari, O guardian of the shelterless, O one and only ocean of mercy, how will I pass my unblessed days and nights without a glimpse of you? And we can also mention this verse to go on a tangent. We heard from, and maybe Chinmoy Prabhu, maybe Nandarani, Didi, Ramanand Prabhu was there, but it was on Gurudev's very last day in Sokel, on his last visit, which I believe was 2007, or maybe, I think it was 2007, right? Was his Gurudev's last visit to America. But it was his very last meeting with the devotees, his very last day, last meeting. He was about to go out the door to the airport. And, he leaves the world 3 years later. But this was his last meeting. And the name of Ananta Bandhu came up, Ananta Bandhu Prabhu, right, who lives in New York City. And Gurudev heard the name Ananta Bandhu, and then he was reminded of this verse where this Ananta Bandhu, which is a beautiful name for the Lord, means the friend of the, it doesn't translate so well into English, but means like the friend of the shelterless, Anat means Lord, Anat means who has no Lord, who has no shelter. So Ananta Bandhu, who is the friend, the friend of the friendless, the friend of the shelterless. So anyhow, Gurudev heard his name mentioned. He was reminded of this verse, and he couldn't remember it right away, and he was trying to remember and asking, Shuddha Shava and others, and then finally he remembered the verse, and then I, as I said, I wasn't there, but I heard from those who were there. Gurudev looked around the room into everyone's eyes and telling them, this verse, looking very seriously into everyone, like he was trying to give them some message, there was some transmission, and he said, this verse is very important for everyone to consider, something like that. And, this is a verse describing this mood of separation, And so, it's like, of course, this is our speculation, but it is significant that it was Gurudev's very last meeting, and he made this expression, on what was to be their last meeting. O Hari, O guardian of the shelterless, O one and only ocean of mercy, how will I pass my unblessed days and nights without a glimpse of you? So, the topic here, or what I was just discussing is this humility, you know, and so humility is very much, in the highest sense, humility is very much connected with vipralambha, with separation. And, you know, that is the highest feeling. So yeah, I don't know if I've really answered your question, but in general, I would. Are you still there? Are you frozen up again, Govindanandini? It looks like she's frozen up. Oh no, is it me? No,
You're good.
I'm okay. Yeah, okay.
She's
My
back.
computer. She's back. Okay, so I don't know if I fully answered your question, but in summary, I would say that, you know, there is some purpose, there's some significance to both of the ways in which these 6 limbs are presented. And, you know, I mean, we've just discussed this mood of humility as an example of that. Does that help?
Wonderfully helped.
Oh.
Wonderful.
It's a very nice topic. It's something that I've really thought about, and I was really I wish I had it in front of me now. I can send you later, but in these comments in Prapana Jivanamrita, they were, sorry, in Brihad Bhagavatamrita that I came across, they made a very strong impression on me, you know, about you know, how love and humility, they have this I can't remember the word that was used, but that idea was expressed, how they both stimulate the other, you know. And it's also a humbling consideration that we're not even qualified to experience true humility. You know, we're still on our way to experiencing humility within in a relative sense. Like, we're not even able to have that properly, you know. That's like stage 1, you know. We don't even have that, you know, like we don't even have clarity on our own condition, what to speak of. And this is what is so ridiculous about, you know, the idea of trying to jump to these higher topics, you know. It's like we haven't even come to the point of realizing our own condition, you know. Like, first let's do that, you know. First let's understand that, and then, you know, maybe we can start to move a little bit towards that plane, you know. There's one article of Srila Sridhar Maharaj where he talks about, I think it's one that Sridhar Shahu published. I think it's the one he called "Have You Seen God?" And he begins by, Srila Sridhar Maharaj begins by, wait, was it the one where somebody asked, I think it was part of an answer to a question. Somebody asked him, "Have you seen God?" Right? But what Srila Sridhar Maharaj said, what I'm coming to is he told of one man who was pretending that he was part of Krishna Leela, and he was dressing like he was a gopi and doing all this kind of nonsense stuff, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, you know, he's known for how in one of the things he's known for is like how direct and how honest, you know, he was. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, one of the things he told him was, you know what you're like, you know, like, you know, like, look within your own self, like what's going through your mind, what's in your heart, like you know yourself what you are. You know, why are you doing this? Why are you pretending? So, you know, that's an important stage. I came across this really interesting article of Srila Bhakti. Somebody posted it on Facebook. This really interesting article of Bhaktivinoda Thakur about Niyamagraha, right? One of the 6 obstacles to devotion in Upadesha, mentioned in Upadeshamrita. But in that article, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he made this very interesting point, which I never considered before, that piety or impiety, it's only considered in connection with what stage we are at. That I'm not articulating it properly, but that he was saying something can only be considered pious or impious depending on whether we are behaving according to our stage or not. You know, so what I mean is like, what may be considered bad and at one stage is not considered bad at another stage, you know. And you know, similarly, what's considered good in one stage can be considered bad in another stage. So what is really necessary is for us to understand what our own stage is and what is proper and improper for us at our current level of development. You know? So, you know, we have to understand, you know, that necessity is always there for us to understand where we are, you know, to understand what stage we are in, to realize what our position is and what our necessity is here and now. And, you know, in the material world, that's, you know, like we use the example of a school sometimes, and you know, right? Because the teacher tells you, oh, you're in class 1 or class 2 or class 3, you know, and it's made very clear what your duties are and what your stage is, et cetera, et cetera. But in spiritual life, it is not always so clear. And we were given so much accommodation and so much space. But anyhow, you know, with all sincerity, we must assess ourselves and understand and recognize, you know, what our stage is, you know, where we are, what is appropriate for us. You know?
Visakha.
Yes.
Also about Niyamagraha, when Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in his song, Anadikara Niyamagrahe Asatsanga Samgatane. So he links it to, when we try to follow rules that are not for our own level, we don't get association. Also, I was thinking maybe we don't also give association when we try to pretend being of some other level and trying to follow a rule that is indicated for other ashram or other level of development. And I stayed with this feeling that maybe there is something else for me there that I couldn't grasp, like some hidden thing that about this pretending pretending following rules. And I think I don't know how to formulate what I'm thinking about, but well, maybe one day I can be able to make this question here.
I missed the point, one of your points in the beginning about association.
Because in the song, in the Sharanagati song, he says, pretending to have another person's level, I didn't get association. In the song, he links the 6 obstacles. One takes to another.
I see.
Like trying to acquire, he begins Atyahara, trying to acquire I need to incur in Prajalpa, and this got me to, yes, a Prayasa, and then took me to Prajalpa. And then he begins this other verse, trying to have another person's level, Niyamagrahe, I try to follow another person's rules, and then Asatsanga Samgatane. I didn't get association from this. And it's tricky because sometimes what is there for me? We know that the general rules we are not supposed to try to follow, but I think there is something hidden that I don't grasp. When you say we don't see ourselves, we are ridiculous sometimes and very innocent, very naive in our behavior, maybe not knowing who I am and trying to be someone else. Not understanding my level, my actual level.
Can I say something, Visakha Didi?
Sure, Prabhu. Dandavat.
Like we have 4 defects. So cheating propensity we have, see, or self-deception. I heard like Guru Maya say also Gurudev. So we have that propensity to cheat ourselves. So that's why Gurudev told always under the guidance of a Vaishnava, we need higher guidance. Even Guru Maya was telling us, we always need guidance. Just my humble opinion. I sometimes don't know what's what, where I am, but I pray and try to hang around. That's why I follow the devotion. Yeah. Even this morning I was listening, Gurudev talking to Avdut Maharaj, and Avdut Maharaj is telling, asking Gurudev questions. When Krishna was there, so many people were there, so they couldn't recognize. So what's kind of their solution?
Thank you, Prabhu.
No, thank you so much. Yeah.
So Govind Randini, yeah, I mean, I think I would need to look at exactly what you're referring to make any more comment. But what I'll just mention to regards what you said is that you know, we have to try to be aware of what lesson is appropriate for us at any given point in our development, and that is something that can change. That is something that will change. You know, as an example, if we're talking about niyamagraha, right, being too attached to the rules or not being attached enough, you know, we saw our Gurudev, you know, give different instructions, like give contrasting instructions in that regard. So what's coming to my mind right now is chocolate. You know, there was one occasion when, you know, there's sometimes some debate about chocolate and also coffee, whether it's acceptable for Ekadashi, because people say it's a fruit, and no, it's a bean. No. And so this was brought to Gurudev once. You know, can we take chocolate on Ekadashi? And Gurudev's, you know, because it's we think it's really a fruit, it's not a bean. And Gurudev's response was that whole discussion was not even relevant, you know, to debate like whether it's technically okay to take it or not. He said that wasn't the point, but he said that we're trying to follow the spirit of Ekadashi, and the spirit of Ekadashi is trying to take more simply, trying to minimize our own enjoyment. So he said better not to take on Ekadashi for that reason. So that was like his instruction to persons like myself who want to enjoy too much. But then there was another occasion, and I won't mention the name, but one of Gurudev's disciples, an Indian disciple who came from Brahminical background, who was very attached to following things in a very strict and austere way. And there was one occasion when Gurudev ordered that disciple to take chocolate on Ekadashi. because they were too rigid about that. They were more concerned with the rule than about the spirit, which is pleasing Krishna, So, and there was another case of one disciple, a Western disciple actually, who Gurudev told this disciple to take something which had some, let's just say, some impure ingredient in it. It was some type of candy bar. And Gurudev told the disciple to take it. And the disciple said, oh, but Gurudev, it has this and this in it, so I can't take it. And then Gurudev told them again, you take it, So he was testing her faith in that moment. He was giving a different lesson there. Like, okay, this is a general rule, but this is something deeper, that the will of Guru overrides everything else. So, we're not interested in rules, actually. We're interested in pleasing Krishna, pleasing Guru, pleasing the Vaishnavas. And so we have to do what is conducive to that, what is supportive of that, And so, the instructions that are given to us may be contradictory at different stages of our progress. So we have to be, try to be conscious and try to be alert. And also in regards to Niyamagraha, what's coming to mind is it's in actually I'm thinking of, I think it's the way it's presented in, because it's that verse is included in Prapana Jivanamrita. It's an expanded verse translation by Saraswati Thakur, and he mentions a mood of exploitation in of course there are different reasons, but one reason, I'm speaking about being too strict about following the rules. One of the reasons it can be, of course, it may just be because one is very attached to following the rules, but what's more common is persons who are very, and this is like this is something that is a part of what are called smarta Brahmins, persons who are very strict about following rules, regulations, but with the consideration of themselves, because they are thinking about, like that pastime of Govinda is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Govinda, Mahaprabhu's servant Govinda, Mahaprabhu, he plays with him one day, right? And he's lying across the doorway and he's very tired, and every day Govinda comes to massage him. And that day he comes, but Mahaprabhu's blocking the doorway. So Govinda's, like perplexed, he in order to be able to do his service, he needs to step over Mahaprabhu. But how can you step over the Lord's body? That is very offensive. And so he has this quandary, and he decides, okay, maybe it's a huge offense, maybe I'll go to hell, but I have to do this service, so I'm just going to step over his body. And then he finishes, and then he's sitting there waiting, and then and normally he will go out again to take his prasadam, but he doesn't, because he doesn't want to step over Mahaprabhu. And so then Mahaprabhu wakes up and, oh, what happened? Why are you still here? Why didn't you go for your prashad. Oh, but I didn't want to step over you. But how did you come in? Like, well, for your service, I can go to hell thousands of times, so I don't mind making an offense if it's for your service. But for my own, satisfaction, I cannot do that. So like in that highest stage, there's no consideration of what's right and what's wrong. There's just pleasing the Lord, That is the only consideration. That is the mood of Vrindavan, that is Raga Bhakti, it is Gurudev, the Raga Bhaktas, Gurudev, he pointed out, it's not that they don't want to follow the rules, that can be a wrong idea that people have, but it's that they want to please the Lord, and in their necessity to do that, they may have to overlook the rules sometimes, Anyway, maybe I'm going off on a tangent. Anyone else have Chinmoy Prabhu? You have any thoughts on this topic?
We can also see how happy Mahaprabhu was when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya took prasadam without bathing.
Right. Yeah, that's a really nice example. That's a really beautiful description in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Mahaprabhu says, today I have conquered the 3 worlds because Sarvabhauma has taken prasad without even washing his mouth, without taking a bath, nothing, he's just taken the Mahaprasad, Yeah, nice example.
I can say, Didi, that I always find it very, I don't know if I want to say dangerous to speak about these topics, because it can lead us to neglect the rules.
Yes.
But I can't remember, I heard it just recently that the rules are in place to push us in that direction. That's the how we get to that Raga Marg, is by following the rules.
Yes.
And then naturally the rules will fall away as we achieve higher and higher devotion to the Lord.
Right. It's a very tricky kind of position we have to take. It's very tricky. Not too much this way, not too much that way. No. One description I heard of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, which I found very helpful, is he described Vidhi Marg as medicine for sick people. That as long as we're still in a diseased condition, by which of course I mean material desire, as long as we're still conditioned by material desire, then we need to follow, the Vidhi Marg, rules, regulations. But once that will help to cure us, and once we're cured, then we don't have to give that attention anymore. But again, and I think you mentioned that too just now, it's not something that we force. It will happen irresistibly, and in that verse that Gurudev was chanting in his last days, that verse of Madhavendra Puri, it's an apology, like, please forgive me because I can't follow these things anymore. Please forgive me. I can't do this worship. I can't do this mantra, etc., because I feel that now I can get everything by just remembering that Lord of my heart. So it is something that will happen irresistibly, not because one arrogantly, arbitrarily decides, oh, now I'm at a higher level, now I don't need to do that. So, yeah. And there will always be that, the sincere devotee will always have that tendency to go to a lower position, to stay in a safer position, and to follow the practice of a lower practitioner. That will always be the mood of a sincere devotee, and will only be out of genuine service necessity that they may, make adjustments and do things a little differently. There was just one little humorous example. Somebody told me of how at one time Gurudev, normally on Ekadashi, it's recommended not to cut your hair or cut your nails because we're trying to detach from the bodily plane. So we're simplifying our activity, and that's one of the things advised, not to cut your hair or nails. And one of the how can I say, it was one of the sannyasis told me this story, who was staying for some period with Gurudev on his veranda. And there was one period, it was like 2 or 3 Ekadashis in a row where Gurudev shaved. And there was another sannyasi there who saw that Gurudev shaved on Ekadashi, and so he thought, oh, well, Gurudev shaving on Ekadashi, I will also shave on Ekadashi. So he imitated that when Gurudev did it, and this other sannyasi told me about this, and then maybe it was the 3rd Ekadashi, Gurudev was starting to do it. And then Gurudev said, oh, I forgot, it's Ekadashi. It wasn't like Gurudev had decided, oh, I'm a Paramahamsa Vaishnava, I don't need to follow that rule anymore. It was just like his play that he'd forgotten, but then someone else was imitating that. But many funny things can come out of imitation.
Yes, I think that's what I was trying to express. Because I'm here from South America, trying to follow things that come from far away. So very easy to fall in these stupid imitations and be ridiculous.
I had a very nice talk recently with Govinda Nandini, and we were saying how, we sometimes can become a little fanatic in our ignorance, like we have this mood of imitation, and we were mentioning how what it was, the thing about the spellings with the A on the end, right? And how we see in our mat, we generally drop the extra A on words, because Bengalis, they don't tend to pronounce it, and that's generally the style that we use. So like it came up in a recording that Chinmoy Prabhu posted, where Gurudev was mentioning Sridhar. Srila Sridhar Maharaj would sign his name Sridhar without an A on the end, and because that was Srila Sridhar Maharaj's preference. Whereas if you're doing it more in a Sanskrit style, like more of a more dignified, more scriptural, more elegant, then you would make it look more Sanskrit, and you would include the A on the end. And so anyhow, our style and our spellings have always been more in that line, like dropping that final A. And I've always been quite fanatic about that. Because like I've always thought, like, this is how Gurudev likes it. But what was so funny was in that talk, Gurudev was saying that he actually preferred it with the A on the end. And he was doing it that way because that's how Srila Sridhar Maharaj preferred it, And it just made me realize how ridiculous, I am sometimes, how ridiculous we can be, like children, like just imitating, the higher Vaishnavas without really understanding all these nuances of feeling and differences in mood, and like we can get so stuck on silly things, like that. Yeah. All right. Well, anyone have any more comments or questions? Nandarani Didi is here with us also. Very happy to have you with us.
Dandavas, Devi.
Dandavad. Dandavad. And also Karan from Calcutta has joined us. Ramananda Prabhu, of course, also joined us. Very happy to have, and I saw Rukmini. I think she's gone again. Rukmini also was there for a little bit. Okay, well, should we stop there for today?
As you like, Didi. We're always very thankful that we can spend any time with you. So
I'm thankful. I'm thankful to be engaged and have all of your auspicious company. Okay.
Thank you, Didi. Actually, it's good to know that Gurudev preferred that A. It's for me.
I'll find you the link. It was a really nice elaboration, Gurudev.
Because we're doing that book, I was not sure about that, because sometimes you have A, sometimes you don't, and
Yeah.
it was not very clear. I used to put the A, but now that's good to know. It's very nice. Thank you.
yeah, I believe in that video where Gurudev Srila Govinda Maharaj jokes that Maharaj or Sri Sridhar Maharaj was dropping the A's, so he was going to change his name to Govind Maharaj.
Right. Yeah, he was saying in some parts of India they say it like that.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, and I think out in Vrindavan or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, my takeaway from that was that I don't have to worry about it so much. Like, yeah. Okay. Well, my Dandavat pranams to all of you, great souls. All glories to our beloved Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj, and hopefully we can meet again next week.
Jai Visakha Devi Dasi ki jai.
Jai Gurudev.
Yeah.